Hello, hello, hello. So I want to get up here on here because this topic has been um in my mind too, because this is something that I'm also in the process of taking accountability for myself and my own life and upbringing. But I think like a lot of people don't, because when you hear about, going to therapy, and when you hear about like, dealing with the even if you didn't grow up in a toxic home, but I mean this is mainly for those who have grew up even in abusive, narcissistic, toxic households. But a lot of people don't talk about, when you grow up in a toxic environment, narcissistic environment, you also take on some of those traits. And I think that, we think about going to therapy as just, venting and, yes, you are, acknowledging what you experience, but it's also being able to take accountability for the traits that you may have um, developed as well, you know, because some traits you don't even realize that you've obtained. You know what I mean? Sorry, my verb is just like, and I still get a little nervous when I post videos, but um, when you grow up in an abusive household and all you see is abuse, how you view the world and how you view relationships and how you view yourself, that is also affected. You know, when you grow up in a household with somebody who's narcissistic, you will take on some of those narcissistic traits. You will. And I think one of the things about, shadow work and healing is being able to realize, like, okay, this happened to me, and I know this happened to me, and I need to work through that. But I also need to reprogram and unlearn toxic behaviors that I've also developed growing up in this environment. And this is something that I'm working through currently too. You know, just for example too, like people pleasing Kim is a form of manipulation. And I was like, dang, when my therapist told me this, and when I've heard people say this, I'm like, what? But it's true. It is. Yes, it's a trauma response, but it is a form of manipulation. When you grew up with a parent who, like, for example, when you hear about guys, or not just guys, because women can be physically abusive too, but when you grow up in a household where your mom or dad was physically abusive and that's what you see, when you get older, you will, or you may view relationships that way. Not you will, because you do have people who grew up in those situations and they don't turn out to be abusive like that, sure. But being able to acknowledge and accept what happened to you, but then also being able to have the courage and strength to look at yourself and look at the toxic traits that you have and say, you know what, I need to fix this. Like in one of my videos, I talk about, when I was that karmic friend, when I had, going through that entitlement that I had with my friends, and even codependency can be very toxic, feeling like I always gotta school everybody because of that codependency, because I have to be the one to to I don't want to say save everybody, but give the advice, but giving advice when it's not even asked for. Um, you know what I mean? Learning other people's boundaries. That everything ain't always about me in a lot of times, in a lot of situations. You know, and I think that's one of the biggest steps of breaking these cycles and these generational curses is acknowledging and realizing the toxicity that you were put into, but also being able to do that shadow work and look within yourself. And I think that's a part of the work that a lot of people don't want to do. Even, I talk about my mom. My mom went to therapy, but she never lasted in therapy because the going to therapy ain't just about venting. Yeah, you vent and you tell your story, but then when it's time for you to actually do the work and actually look at yourself, and when you go through that ego death of dang, I got is more is layers to this. It's layers to this, and it's really hard. It is hard. It's painful. It can be kind of stressful. That's why I think when it comes down to healing, when talking about having joy and having fun, and not just healing is not just your identity. Your trauma is not just your identity, but it 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 can be really complicated, but rewarding at the same time. Because it feels good when I take a look at myself, and then because sometimes I find myself kind of pulling myself apart like like I'm a puzzle. Like, okay, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing this. I need to fix on that. I need to fix on that because for me, healing and breaking trauma is also having a better relationship with myself, but also having a better relationship with those around me who I love and care about. Yes, you put your oxygen mask on first. Yes, you work on your self love and your self care because you can't show up for those if you can't show up for yourself. But also being able to show up for those is an amazing feeling, because I'm blessed to have a best friend who I've known since I was 12, um, who stuck it through with me. I wasn't always the perfect friend. Um, family members who love and support me, especially those who support my no contact with my mom, because when you go no contact with a toxic family member, you gonna have those who's gonna be putting bugs. Oh, that's you only get one mother, you only get one father, you know, and you gotta learn how to set boundaries with those people or cut those people off. But being able to just, take a step back and like, I have, I have ways that I need to work on and be proud of that. Give yourself grace. I'm learning how to give myself grace. It's easy for me to say give yourself grace because I'm learning how to give myself grace. Um, but this is something that I'm coming into just a realization with, and it's really hard, but it's also freeing because I'm learning to be more so for where I'm learning who I am more by saying, you know what, and even learning not to be so judgmental at times. Like, oh, look at that person, but then it's like, I can I can relate with bitterness. I can relate with resentment. I can even relate with jealousy because I felt those feelings before. I felt those emotions before. But you have to learn how to acknowledge those emotions and um, not project those emotions when you learn to acknowledge that you have those emotions and work through it. You know, because when I see it in those, of course, I have that hint of, okay, I don't want to be around it. But then at the same time, I also have that feeling of, I can relate to that and I can give grace from a distance or understanding from a distance because, should I, shoot, I'm going through my bitterness phase. I'm going through my resentment phase. I am. And I'm even acknowledging jealousy. Because a lot of these emotions, these not so like high vibrational emotions, are emotions that we are afraid um, to deal with. You know, we are. We are afraid. But when you start to deal with it and acknowledge it, you kind of stop and think like, wow, like I'm, very brave. Because it takes a brave person, to be able to tap into it, to be able to say, I'm feeling this, I'm experiencing this. What can I do? How can I work through it? Because and once you start to kind of like for me, when I'm starting to feel that way, I feel more a sense of self. you know, because I've um grew up a long time of like suppressing my emotions and not knowing what my emotions are or knowing how to deal with my emotions. I'm not saying like I was out here just, you know, being wild, but I was always the type of person where, you know, when things happen to me, I just tuck it in and get up and go and start my day. Not being able to identify, you know, when I'm feeling hurt, when I'm feeling sad. Because when you are brought up in an environment where your emotional needs weren't met, that does affect you as an adult. And it does affect people around you too. But just wanted to talk about that because that's been heavy on my mind. That's something that I'm currently working through and dealing and acknowledging.